I never thought something like this could happen to me, but here I am, telling the world about the betrayal that still stings like it was yesterday. My name's Alex. I'm 26, and if you asked anyone in my life, I was always the one to go above and beyond for the people I cared about. I've always been the kind of person who thrives on helping others, especially my best friend, Ryan. We'd known each other since high school, bonded over our shared interests in tech, video games, and pretty much anything that involved deep diving into nerdy stuff. Our friendship was like a well-oiled machine. We got each other, always had each other's backs. I thought the world of him, and I never imagined he'd do something that would make me question everything. It all started a couple of years ago when Ryan and I were working on this tech project together. We were both trying to create a new app, something simple, but with potential. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, but we thought it could make a difference in the way people track their daily habits. I did all the legwork. I coded the majority of the app, designed the UI, and even put together the first working prototype. Ryan, well, he was good at brainstorming ideas, but he wasn't nearly as skilled at the technical side of things. And that's where I came in. I wasn't bothered by it. I liked working on the technical stuff, and I liked that we were partners. Or at least, that's what I thought. We spent months on the project. I had late nights, long weekends, and a few moments where I could have just thrown in the towel, but I didn't. Ryan kept telling me that the app had great potential, that it could be huge. So I kept going. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before. In the back of my mind, though, something was starting to feel off. Ryan would be there, giving suggestions, sure, but he never really offered to help with any of the actual work. He'd be the one saying, "Oh, I've got this great idea for the app," but when it came time to do the nitty-gritty coding or testing, I'd be the one doing it all. I tried to push my feelings aside. I didn't want to overthink it. We were friends, right? So what if I was doing all the hard work? I didn't need the praise or recognition, just the satisfaction of getting the job done. At least, that's what I told myself. But then the project began to take off. We started getting attention from some investors, and Ryan's attitude started to shift. He went from we to I whenever he talked about the app. "I think this feature could work well," he'd say. "I'm going to pitch this to some investors." I started to notice he was taking all the credit. In meetings with potential backers, he would talk about how his vision was coming together, how he was spearheading the project. And every time I said something about my contributions, he'd quickly brush me off, making me feel like I was just some minor player in the background. I tried to talk to him about it, but every time, he'd assure me it was just a phase. He'd tell me, "Don't worry, you're still a part of this. It's just that now we need to focus on getting more attention. This is the next step." But I knew the truth. I could feel it in the way he'd talk to people, in the way he handled everything like he was the one doing all the heavy lifting. I even caught him telling a few people that he was the mastermind behind the app. But I just kept quiet, biting my tongue, hoping it would pass. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. The final straw came when we were in a meeting with a major investor. The kind of investor that could take our app from a small side project to a real business. Ryan had told me he wanted me to be there to pitch the app with him. I was excited. Finally, all that hard work, all those sleepless nights, would be recognized. We were in a conference room, the investor sitting across from us, and Ryan was going on and on about the vision for the app. But when the investor turned to me and asked, "So, what part did you play in the development?" Ryan quickly jumped in and said, "Oh, Alex was just helping with the tech side. But the real work was all me, bringing the vision together." I froze. I stared at him, my heart racing, my mind spinning. He had taken everything, every single thing I had done, and made it his own. I could feel the anger building up inside me, but I kept my face neutral. The investor seemed to buy it. The deal was made, and Ryan and I walked out of the meeting room together. When we got to the parking lot, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Ryan, what was that?" I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. He looked at me like I was crazy. "What do you mean? I'm just trying to get us the deal. Don't you get it? This is how the game works." "No, it's not." I almost shouted. "You took all the credit for my work. You've been doing it for months now. I've been busting my ass on this app, and you've just been sitting back, letting me do all the work while you take all the glory." He sighed, rolling his eyes like I was overreacting. "Alex, stop. You're being dramatic. It's business. Don't you understand? We needed this deal. It's just how it is." I was speechless. I stood there for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts. And then, without saying another word, I got into my car and drove off. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't even care. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could think about was how Ryan had stolen everything I had worked for. How he had turned something we built together into something he could profit off of while I was left in the dust. And the worst part? He still didn't get it. He still didn't see how much he had taken from me. But I wasn't going to let it go. Not this time. The next day, he called me, asking me to help him with something on the app. Something that would require a lot of my expertise. He didn't ask if I was available. He didn't apologize. He didn't even acknowledge how he'd treated me. It was just, "Hey, can you help with this? I need you to do this thing for me." And that's when I decided enough was enough. I was done being the nice guy. Done being the one who always helped him, no matter how much he took me for granted. I wasn't going to be his doormat anymore. So I said it. No, he paused, obviously surprised. What? Come on, Alex. I need you. I know you need me. But I don't need to help you anymore. Not after everything you've done. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, he tried to play it off. You're being ridiculous. This is just a small setback. You're still a part of the team. But I wasn't buying it. And I wasn't going to be there to fix everything for him anymore. I hung up the phone, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But that was just the beginning. Ryan was about to find out just how far I was willing to go. The silence after I hung up the phone felt like the calm before a storm. I could already sense the wheels turning in Ryan's mind. He was used to having me around, fixing his messes, picking up his slack. But not this time. I wasn't going to play along anymore. I didn't know how he'd react, but I was done being the nice guy who just takes it. The thing is, though, I didn't fully understand just how far Ryan would go to make sure I didn't walk away from him. And I was about to find out. The first couple of days after I told him no were almost eerily quiet. He didn't call me, didn't text. I thought maybe he'd gotten the hint, that maybe he was giving me some space to cool off. But deep down, I knew Ryan. I knew he wouldn't let something like this slide without trying to fix it on his terms. Sure enough, by the third day, he called again. This time, though, it wasn't a casual request for help with the app. No, this time it was different. I let the phone ring for a few seconds before I picked it up. "Hello, Alex," he said, his voice a little too calm, almost eerie. "We need to talk." I could hear the arrogance in his tone, like he thought everything would just go back to normal. "What about?" I asked, trying to keep my cool. "About the project. And about you pulling away. You're being unreasonable, Alex. You know that, right?" The audacity. I could feel my blood starting to boil again. "Unreasonable? You're the one who took all the credit for my work, Ryan. You're the one who made it all about you." He sighed like I was making a bigger deal out of nothing. "Alex, stop. This isn't the time to throw a tantrum. The deal is in motion now, and if we want to make this work, we have to stick together. You know that. So, stop being so stubborn and come back to the project." I wanted to laugh. I really did. The nerve of him to act like nothing had happened. "I'm not coming back, Ryan. Not like this." "Look," he said, suddenly sounding more desperate. "I get it. I do. But we're partners in this, and I need you. I don't know what's gotten into you, but we can still make this work. You know I've got your back." I didn't respond immediately. I was trying to stay calm, but it was hard. Every word he said felt like a slap in the face, like he thought I could just forget everything. "No, Ryan," I said, finally my voice firm. "You don't have my back. You never did. You only care about getting ahead." There was a long pause, and I could almost hear the wheels in his head turning, trying to find a way to twist my words. "Fine. You want to walk away? Then walk away. But don't expect me to clean up your mess when it all falls apart." That was the breaking point. The way he said it so coldly, so dismissively, made me realize just how far gone our friendship had become. I wasn't just his partner anymore. I was a tool, a stepping stone to get him where he wanted to go. And it was at that moment that I decided I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not anymore. I didn't respond. I just hung up. I knew what I had to do next. Over the next few days, I started making plans. Ryan might have thought he could just push me around, but I wasn't going to let him. I wasn't going to sit back and let him walk all over me any longer. So, I started digging into the app's code, into all the stuff he didn't know about, the stuff he never bothered to learn because he was too busy making himself look good. I started pulling out the things that would make it all fall apart if he tried to move forward without me. Nothing malicious, just enough to make it clear that without me, his project would be nothing. I knew it was risky, but I didn't care. He'd taken everything from me, and now it was time to take back control. A week went by, and I could feel Ryan getting more anxious. Every time I saw him or talked to him, he seemed more desperate. He'd call, text, and email. Nothing was enough to get me to respond. But one afternoon, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. I wasn't expecting it, but I knew it was coming. I opened the door, and there he was, standing in the hallway with that look on his face. The same look he had when we were kids, trying to talk his way out of trouble. "Alex, come on. We need to talk." I didn't let him in. "What's there to talk about, Ryan? I know you're mad. I get it. But we're friends. This project is everything to both of us. You can't just walk away." I crossed my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. "You don't get it. This was never about the project, Ryan. It was about respect. You took everything I worked for, and you acted like I was just a tool for you to use. I'm not doing this anymore." He stepped forward, his face tightening in frustration. "You're throwing away everything we built. Everything we've worked for. Everything you built." I corrected him. "You didn't do this with me, Ryan. You did it without me." He stared at me, his expression darkening. "You'll regret this, you know. You're making a huge mistake." I stood my ground, not backing down. "Maybe, but it's not your mistake to make anymore." The silence between us hung heavy, and for a brief moment, I saw the desperation in his eyes, the same desperation I'd been feeling all along. But now it was his turn to feel it. And just when I thought it was over, Ryan did something that made my blood run cold. He pulled out his phone and showed me a message, one that had been sent to our investor. A message that made my stomach drop. Ryan had convinced the investor to cut me out completely, offering me a pittance to walk away and giving him full control of the project. "You're not going to get away with this," I said, my voice trembling with anger. I wasn't just hurt. I was furious. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was personal. He'd crossed a line. But Ryan just smiled. "It's already done, Alex. There's nothing you can do now." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but deep down, I knew he was wrong. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I was about to show him just how wrong he was. Ryan's smug grin was enough to make me angry. He thought he had me cornered, like he'd won the game, and I was just some pawn he could discard. But in that moment, something clicked inside me. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about taking back what was mine, about reclaiming my hard work and dignity. I had been his safety net for so long, always cleaning up his messes, always covering for him. But now? Now, I was done. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. "You think you've won?" I asked, my voice colder than I felt. Ryan's grin widened. "I don't just think it, I know it. You're out, Alex. This is over." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Instead, I reached over, grabbed my phone, and pulled up the email chain between me and the investor. It was a lengthy conversation, long enough to show that Ryan had been manipulating things from the start, feeding the investor lies about my involvement in the project, exaggerating my contributions to make it look like I was a liability. It wasn't just about me being cut out. It was about him painting me as someone who wasn't worth investing in. I knew what I had to do. I turned the phone screen toward him, showing him the message thread. "You want to talk about being cut out?" I said, the anger rising in my chest again. "You've been feeding the investor lies about me, Ryan, and that's something I'm not going to let slide." He looked at the screen, his face draining of color as he scanned the messages. There was no hiding it. His manipulations were right there in black and white. I could feel the shift in the air, the tension between us growing thicker. He wasn't so confident anymore. "What do you think you're going to do with that?" He sneered, but I could tell he was rattled. "I'm going to the investor," I said, locking eyes with him. "I'm going to make sure he knows the truth. And this whole project? It's over for you if I do that." Ryan's face twisted in anger, but now I could see the desperation. He didn't want the world to know what he had done. He didn't want anyone to see the truth, the ugly reality of his selfishness. "You wouldn't do that," he growled. "You're bluffing." I stood my ground, my fingers hovering over the email app, Try Me. "Do you really want to risk everything for this?" "I have all the proof I need." He opened his mouth, then closed it, his mind clearly working overtime to find a way out. For the first time in a long while, Ryan seemed to be the one cornered. He had always been the manipulative one, the one in control, but now the tables had turned. "You think you've got me, don't you?" he said, trying to regain his composure. But I could see the cracks in his facade. He wasn't nearly as sure of himself anymore. "I don't need to think," I said, standing taller. "I know I've got you." and I'm not going to let you keep getting away with it." For a moment, there was silence. Ryan's face twitched, his mind clearly calculating his next move. He could see that this was his last chance to fix things, but there was no easy out anymore. The leverage was in my hands, and I wasn't going to just let him walk away from this, like he always had before. "Look, Alex," he said after a long pause, his voice lowering, almost pleading. "I made a mistake. Okay, I get it. But you've got to understand, I was just trying to make things happen. I thought I could make it all work without you, but I was wrong. I need you. We can fix this, right? I'll make it up to you. Just please don't go to the investor." I crossed my arms, a bitter taste in my mouth. "You think I'm going to just forgive you after everything? After all the lies, the manipulation, the stealing of my ideas?" He started, but I cut him off. "You used me, Ryan," I said, the words tumbling out faster now. "You used me for my skills, for my work, and when it was convenient for you, you threw me aside. And now you want me to just help you out of the mess you created? No, that's not how this works." He didn't respond immediately. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes that wasn't entitlement. Regret, maybe, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. "Ryan, I'm not helping you. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done pretending like this is just a simple misunderstanding. This is about respect, and you lost that a long time ago." He opened his mouth to argue again, but I wasn't interested in listening to excuses. "You've got two choices," I said, the words hanging heavy in the air. "You can keep pretending you're in control, or you can admit that you messed up and face the consequences." His face twisted with frustration. "You don't understand, Alex. This isn't just about the project. It's about everything we've worked for. I've given so much. You've given nothing," I interrupted, my voice low and firm. "You've taken everything from me, and now you expect me to bail you out? No, this is on you." Ryan stood there for a moment, looking defeated. His eyes flickered down to the phone in my hand, and then back to me. I could feel the weight of his stare, like he was trying to figure out if he could somehow worm his way out of this. But there was no coming back from this. Not this time. He exhaled sharply and finally said the words I'd been waiting for. "Fine. Do it. Send the email. But know this. You're ruining everything. You're ruining everything we had." I shook my head. "You ruined that long before I walked away." And with that, I hit send. The email went off, the message already drafted, and the finality of it hit me like a punch to the gut. But it felt good too. It felt like I was finally taking back control. Ryan could say what he wanted, but I knew this was the only way to fix it. I wasn't going to let him get away with it anymore. The moment I hit send, I stood there in silence, waiting for his next move. Ryan had always been good at finding a way to manipulate things, but this time, he didn't have the upper hand. I was done being his backup. I was done being his fall guy. Ryan just stared at me for a long moment, and then he turned and walked out of the apartment without another word. And just like that, everything changed. The conflict wasn't over yet, though. Ryan wasn't going to take this lying down. I knew that. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had the upper hand. I didn't know how this was going to end, but one thing was clear: this was far from over. The days that followed were a whirlwind of tension. I barely slept, consumed with the weight of what had happened. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts from Ryan, begging for a chance to talk, to fix things, but I ignored them all. He had pushed me too far, and now there was no going back. It wasn't just the business with the investor, it was everything that had built up over the years. The countless times he'd used me, taken advantage of my skills, and expected me to clean up his messes without so much as a thank you. I had spent too long being the one who always had to pick up the pieces, and I was tired of it. This time, I was standing up for myself. A week later, I got a call from the investor. His voice was calm, but I could tell there was a trace of disappointment in it. "Alex," he said, "I've been reviewing everything, and I have to admit, I'm concerned. Ryan's behavior, his lack of transparency. It's not what we agreed upon." My heart dropped as I listened. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. Ryan had been exposed, and the consequences were finally catching up to him. But instead of feeling vindicated, I felt empty. It was like I had won a battle, but the war had taken so much from me that the victory didn't feel as sweet as I had imagined. After a long conversation with the investor, we agreed that the project would move forward without Ryan. He was out, officially. The terms had been rewritten, and I was given control of the work I had poured my soul into. I was finally free from his grasp. But even as I stood on the precipice of this new opportunity, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. A few days later, I ran into Ryan. It was an awkward encounter at a coffee shop. He looked different, more defeated than I had ever seen him. His usual cocky attitude was gone, replaced by a sense of vulnerability I hadn't expected. For a moment, I almost felt pity for him. Almost. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me with a mixture of anger and regret. Finally, he sighed, slumping into a chair across from me. "You know, I never thought it would come to this," he said quietly. "I never thought you'd actually send that email. I thought you'd always just let it slide like you always did before." I stayed silent, not sure what to say. It wasn't like I wanted him to be miserable. I just wanted him to understand what he had done, to realize that actions have consequences and that taking people for granted has a price. "I was stupid," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should have never used you. You were the one person who always had my back, and I messed that up. I don't know how to fix it." His words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, I thought about forgiving him. It would have been easy to just brush everything aside and go back to the way things were. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. I had finally found the strength to let go, to stop being the person who always picked up the pieces for everyone else. I had to move forward, even if that meant leaving him behind. "Ryan," I said, my voice firm but not unkind, "I can't fix this. Not anymore. You had your chances, and you chose to take advantage of me every time. I've given enough. It's your turn to figure things out on your own." He stared at me for a long time, his face a mix of frustration and resignation. He didn't say anything else. He just stood up and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving me with a strange sense of finality. It wasn't easy. Letting go of someone who had once been so important to me, someone who had been my closest friend, my partner in everything, was hard. But it was also necessary. I couldn't keep letting him drag me down. I had to stand on my own, to build my own future without him. As the weeks passed, I focused on moving forward. The project took off, and despite the rocky start, I found myself in a place I had never imagined I'd be on my own, but stronger than ever. The investor was happy with the progress, and I was finally getting the recognition I deserved. It felt good. It felt right. Ryan, on the other hand, seemed to disappear from the scene entirely. I heard through mutual friends that he was struggling, trying to rebuild his reputation, but the damage had been done. He had lost everything: his partnership with the investor, his connection with me, and the trust of everyone who had once believed in him. The final piece of the puzzle came when I received an email from him one day. It was short, simple. "I messed up. I get it now. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The apology, though long overdue, came too late. I had moved on. I sat back in my chair, staring at the message, realizing that in letting go of Ryan, I had gained so much more than I had lost. The power to stand up for myself, the strength to walk away, and the freedom to build a life on my own terms. And that was all I needed.